Hello, and welcome to Cellular Wisdom, the podcast where we take a microscope to the building blocks of health and discover just how bizarre and brilliant our bodies can be. I'm Ethan Foster, often described as a professional observer of the human condition, and sometimes mistaken for a statue because of my expertly timed deadpan. With me, as always, is my co-host, Ilara Sky.
Thank you, Ethan. I'm the super nerd with an offbeat sense of humor, always ready to decipher complex health concepts and turn them into tangy comedic bites. This is our show about living at the cellular level, because hey, if you can't laugh at your own cells, what can you laugh at?
Exactly. Now today our topic is colon cancer, specifically how ultra-processed foods and vegetable oils might be making things in our gut a lot more complicated than they need to be. Sounds thrilling, right?
It's the highlight of anyone's day. But in all seriousness, colon cancer is the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths in the United States, which immediately gets our attention. There's a good reason to look at our diets more closely, especially since we're living in a time when health food can sometimes look suspiciously like neon orange fried puffs, disguised as a protein snack.
I've seen those. The label says, made with real cheese, but the color says, I glow in the dark. So, yes folks, we're talking about the potential villains hidden in these so-called convenient, ultra-processed foods. Specifically, vegetable oils rich in something called linoleic acid, or LA, which might just be fueling the fire of chronic inflammation.
And if that doesn't grab your attention, let me provide the comedic sledgehammer, overdue LA. And you're basically giving your gut an eviction notice for all the good bacteria and rolling out the welcome mat for the bad guys. Think of your gut like a city. The good bacteria are the industrious shopkeepers, and the troublemakers are the ones spray painting your garage door at 3 a.m.
I'd say that's a sign I should probably start reading ingredients more carefully. Let's start at the top. The ultra-processed foods that so many of us turn to for convenience. Instant noodles, frozen pizzas, pre-packaged goodies often come loaded with vegetable oils. Canola, corn, soybean, you name it. They're cheap, they're abundant, and apparently not so great for the friendly microbes in your gut.
Right. There's this phenomenon called lipid class switching. That's basically the body's normal inflammatory response turning off and moving into, let's repair this folks mode. But research shows that in colon cancer cells, that switch doesn't happen properly. It stays stuck in the inflammation setting, rather than cruising into resolution.
So it's a bit like leaving the stove on high, even after the soup has already boiled. It's going to burn if you don't turn down the heat.
Exactly. The soup is your tissues, and the heat is inflammation. And that's one factor that can accelerate the development of colon cancer, especially when a high intake of LA disrupts that critical switch.
Let's stay on the LA track for a moment. We do need some linoleic acid, can't banish it completely. But when you drown yourself in foods loaded with LA, the body accumulates too much of this stuff in your tissues. It lingers, and not in a good way.
The half-life of LA in body fat is around 600 to 800 days, which is basically 2 years. Think of it as an extended stay at a questionable motel. Once it checks in, it's reluctant to leave.
So if you're living on deep-fried everything, your body's got a backlog of LA that just keeps piling up. That can lead to inflammatory processes running amok, turning your gut into a war zone. And ironically, the primary casualty is your health.
War zones don't usually produce good outcomes for civilians. The same holds true for your gut microbes. This is where the conversation about the gut microbiome gets intriguing. We have trillions of friendly bacteria, and plenty of opportunistic troublemakers. A balanced gut keeps the troublemakers in line, but excessive inflammation can lead to chaos, giving the unfriendlies the upper hand.
We're focusing on colon cancer, but that's just one domino in this precarious chain. Chronic inflammation can lead to a whole range of health issues. So we want that inflammation to recede like a peaceful tide, not come crashing in like a never-ending monsoon.
You've got to wonder how our diets got so reliant on these vegetable oils. I think it goes back to the industrial revolution of food production, where canola, corn, and soybean oils became the cheap, omnipresent choices in restaurants, packaged snacks, and home cooking.
Convenience is a double-edged sword. We save time, but might pay for it later with medical bills. So it's not just about saying, I will never touch a French fry again, though you might want to cut back. It's about understanding how many of our go-to meals are loaded with these oils that keep fueling the flames.
Let's talk about the Western diet as a prime suspect. It's heavy in omega-6 and relatively low in omega-3, leading to an imbalance. And when you add a bunch of sugar and refined carbs on top of that, you're basically building a rocket ship for inflammation to blast off.
If that rocket soars high enough, it's going to re-enter your atmosphere in an unpleasant meltdown, not the kind of fireworks we want.
Exactly. And we know from multiple studies that a diet heavy in these particular fats can mutate your gut microbiome into a breeding ground for harmful bacteria, all the while damaging your cell's capacity to move out of that inflammatory phase. There's a direct link there to colon cancer risk.
Let's pivot for a second to remind ourselves that the gut is not an isolated organ. It's intimately connected to other bodily systems, including your immune response, your metabolic health, and even your brain. So The gut-brain axis is a very real highway of communication.
Yes. And it's why your gut can influence your mood, your cognitive function. Some would say even your comedic timing, Ethan.
That's a terrifying thought. Maybe if I slip up with my comedic timing, I should check my diet. Now, one of the best ways to support a balanced gut is to eat real whole foods. That means a variety of fruits, vegetables, healthy carbohydrates, and proteins from good sources.
And let's not forget fermented foods, which are the VIP lounge for probiotics. Stuff like kimchi, sauerkraut, homemade yogurt, they help usher in good bacteria. And for people who can't stomach the idea of, say, fermented cabbage, a high-quality probiotic supplement is an option.
Another piece of the puzzle is stress. Chronic stress can also disrupt the gut environment, basically turning that city of bacteria into a population of frantic, hyperactive troublemakers. So, stress management, whether that's mindfulness, yoga, nature walks, can help calm those microbial citizens.
Meditation doesn't just quiet your mind, it can also quiet your gut's gossip chain. And, ironically, help you choose healthier foods, which might be the biggest step to reduce inflammation and get that crucial class switch from inflamed to resolved.
Good sleep is another major factor. If you're skimping on rest, it's like trying to get a project done with half your brain on vacation. Your body needs proper sleep to maintain a healthy microbiome, among other things.
Meanwhile, moderate exercise supports gut health by improving the diversity of your bacteria. But here's a caveat. Going overboard with super high-intensity workouts can sometimes do more harm than good. There's this fine line. We want to keep it moderate for the best gut benefits.
Right? Running ultramarathons might be inspiring, but it can also stress the body enough to create certain gut imbalances, including leaky gut. That's not to say people can't train in amazing ways, but if the goal is to optimize gut health, you might want to pay attention to how your body responds.
Now, let's get into the practical side of cutting down on LA. If you're interested in lowering your LA intake to 5 grams a day, or even 2 grams if you're ambitious, you'll need to get cozy with nutrition trackers. Chronometer is a popular one. You type in your foods, and it gives you a breakdown.
It's like a personal accountant for your diet. Just remember to pay attention to the oils used in your favorite takeout and processed snacks. Many times, you don't even realize you're eating a ton of soy, canola, or corn oil unless you read the label or ask the restaurant.
This is where detective work pays off. Don't get hoodwinked by phrases like, made with 100% vegetable oil. That's about as reassuring as 100% chance of mild chaos. You want to look for specific mentions of avocado oil, coconut oil, or even good old-fashioned butter from grass-fed cows, anything that naturally keeps LA levels in check.
Speaking of checks, we also want to keep an eye on omega-3. Although it's generally considered anti-inflammatory, it's still a polyunsaturated fat. If you overdo it, it can turn rancid in the body too, contributing to oxidative stress. So we can't just guzzle fish oil and call it a day. Balance is key.
Moderation in everything, including healthy stuff. That's the basic principle. It's not about labeling fats good or evil in black and white terms. It's about proportions, synergy, and, dare I say, common sense.
Let's reframe. Instead of good versus evil, think of your diet as a cast of characters. LA is the feisty one who can be super helpful in small doses, but becomes an uncontrollable gossip if given too large a spotlight. Omega-3 is the calm friend who can quell arguments, but if hogging the conversation, can go off the rails too.
Exactly. And we haven't even gotten into the supporting cast, like prebiotics, which feed the beneficial bacteria in your gut, or dietary fiber, which acts like a traffic director to keep everything moving smoothly. Throw in vitamins and minerals, and you have quite a complex script.
Let's circle back to the main storyline, colon cancer. The gist is, a chronically inflamed gut environment can set the stage for cancer cells to thrive. And a major contributor to that chronic inflammation is an overabundance of LA, courtesy of a Western diet heavy in ultra-processed foods.
So if you'd like your colon cells to avoid turning into supervillains, consider being picky about the oils you consume. Also, be mindful of all the other habits that support a healthy gut environment. Moderate exercise, enough sleep, stress management, a diet rich in whole foods, and a balanced approach to fats.
Let's also talk about the emotional side of food, because it's easy for us to say, stop eating that bag of potato chips, or throw away that tub of margarine. But food culture is powerful. We're attached to certain comforts, certain traditions, certain flavors.
True, and no one wants to be the person at a party exclaiming, "Is that soybean oil? I refuse to partake." That's a bit dramatic, even for me. It's about incremental changes. Maybe you swap that store-bought salad dressing, loaded with soybean oil, for an olive oil-based version. Maybe you cook your eggs in butter instead of canola.
Small shifts can make a big difference over time, and after a while, your taste buds adapt. You might even discover you like homemade food better than all those pre-packaged shortcuts. Your gut and your taste buds might end up celebrating.
That's the ideal scenario, switching from chaos to resolution, not just in your cells, but in your entire approach to eating. Plus, if you learn to cook more, you get to dazzle friends and family, Nothing says I love you like a homemade meal that doesn't set their intestines on fire.
That's the kind of Hallmark card I'd actually read. Moving on, the final piece of advice is simply awareness. The more you know about what goes into your body, the better decisions you can make. And that includes which cooking oils you choose, which snack labels you read, and how often you let convenience overshadow health.
Yes. It's not about condemnation. Life happens. We get busy. We end up with takeout. That's okay occasionally. But if we rely on ultra-processed foods day in and day out, we can't expect our colon to hold a cheerful protest sign that says, "We're good here."
Precisely. So if we want to keep the colon from revolting, we should think about moderation and mindfulness. And hey, if you need extra motivation, keep in mind that your gut health also affects your skin, your mood, and possibly your comedic wit.
And we all know comedic wit is the pinnacle of human evolution. Well, maybe that's just my bias. But yes, your cells hold a lot of wisdom, so let's tap into that. Let's help them turn off the inflammatory sirens and get back to business as usual.
That's the essence of Dr. Mercola's cellular wisdom we're talking about today. Understanding these principles, applying them in real life, and maybe saving ourselves from unnecessary trouble down the road. Because the last thing we want is to call the plumber for a colon meltdown.
And with that charming image, we hope we've given you some good insights, a few laughs, and maybe a reason to squint at the label on your next snack. Remember, folks, your gut is the engine that powers so much of your health, so treat it well.
Thanks for joining us on Cellular Wisdom. We appreciate you tuning in. I'm Ethan Foster, hoping you glean something useful that will keep your colon content and your sense of humor intact.
And I'm Alara Sky, reminding you that knowledge is power, especially when it involves what you put on your plate. Stay curious, stay mindful, and stay healthy, one cell at a time.
Until next time, everyone, take care and keep those cells singing in harmony.
Amen to that, Ethan. Catch you later.